been 2:30. Can I welcome you all? And the first thing is just to ask, make sure your phones are on silent, please. And can I remind members and staff that the public section of this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and that the recordings will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers, and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. So with that heavy word, I open the meeting and call for apologies. I have one apology so far, that's Councillor Thompson, who is in a smart right here. And as we don't have an alternative, it's just you and me. So I'll move the apologies because I don't think there's any others.
No, we're all here.
Seconded by Councillor Selwood. And welcome, Jess. So all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Nice to see you here. Mrs. What are you, Mrs. Bokakotai or Mrs. NZTA?
Whatever you want me to do.
Just checking. Okay. Public forum, there is none. Items not on the agenda, there is one, which is the Arataki bus facility verbal update. And that will be heard in the public excluded. And the reason that this item is not on the agenda is because the information was not available until after the agenda was prepared, and an update was requested by BOPRC before the next scheduled meeting of the committee. So can I call for a mover and seconder to accept the items not on the agenda, noting they'll be heard in the public excluded? And do I need to read out the resolution? No, that we'll just do that. Moved by Commissioner Tolley, seconded by Commissioner Selwood. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We move order of business. Late items will be heard after 10.2 in the public excluded. Are there any conflicts of interest? There are none. There's no public excluded business to be transferred to the open. The minutes on page 8 of your agenda. These are the minutes dated 17th of October.
Happy to move.
Moved Commissioner Tolley, seconded Commissioner Selwood. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Are there any matters arising that won't come up elsewhere? Don't believe so either, so that's fine. So we move on to the verbal reports. The director's update. Ollie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Seaborn sends his apologies. I think many of you will know Mike is suffering with COVID at the moment, so has made the wise decision to stay clear of us all today. So I'm here to deliver the director's update. First of all, since the last meeting of this committee, we now have a coalition government in place. I think it's important to remember that staff need to remain cautious and measured. We're conscious that a lot was said on the campaign trail, and the recently released coalition agreements give us the first insights into the strategic intent of this new government, and more will be understood as we move through the first 100 days. There are some particular points of interest and potential opportunity. From a funding perspective, I'm sure many of you will have seen that there is consideration afforded through the National and ACT coalition agreements for a portion of GST to be potentially shared with councils. That's GST collected off new residential properties. We also see through the National New Zealand First coalition agreement the return of RONs, roads of national significance, with two of those located within the Western Bay, those being State Highway 29 at Tauranga West and Tikitimo Northern Link Stage 2. We've also heard discussions around potential alternative funding streams for transport, so that's in addition to the NRTF, which could include things like city deals. Finally, I think it's worth noting that the Minister for Local Government is also the Minister for Transport. That portfolio, I think, is really important for us in terms of the understanding of the issues that we face here in local government when it comes to transport. The new government have signalled that they do intend to update government policy statements on land transport, the GPS, which is ultimately the North Star for transport investment, especially for the Regional Land Transport Plan, which many of you will be aware is currently being updated by the Regional Transport Committee, supported by staff. In relation to the RLTP, this week staff will be concluding the technical ranking of transport initiatives to produce the draft programme. This has been a substantial effort which has been going on for a fair while, and that's been undertaken utilising the Regional Advisory Group, the RAG network, which is comprised of staff representation from all TLAs across the region. And I note that representatives from the RAG group from both the OPRC and TCC are in the room with us today. The draft scoring will be presented to the RTC on the 15th of December, where members will have the opportunity to review the draft scoring, discuss and suggest amendments accordingly. Of particular interest to this committee will be a number of significant projects for Tauranga that have made it into the draft top 10. Those initiatives include State Highway 29A, Cameron Road Stage 2, connecting Mount Maunganui, and 15th to Welcome Bay. That's not a conclusive list, and as I say, still draft at this point, and that will be discussed further on the 15th of December. It's worth noting that changes to the GPS could ultimately impact the ranking of projects, but it's Staff's view that these implications are unlikely to be significant. We might see slight jostling for position, but we don't expect anything to completely fall out of the programme with GPS updates, but we will see what comes out over the coming weeks and months. And then finally, I think it's worth just saying that given that the RLTP and central government election processes quite frequently coincide, this uncertainty is neither unusual or unexpected. Staff will remain flexible, adaptable and dynamic, and keep politicians briefed on opportunities and challenges that may present themselves over the coming months. That's all from me, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Heavy. Thank you, Ollie. And we will move then on to we don't need to do any. We'll move on to the Chair's report, which is page 15, and this will be presented by Stuart Nightingale, I believe. Stuart.
Thank you. Yes, the Chair's report is attached, and if it can be accepted as read, I could take any questions to draw attention to a few specific updates. In respect to an update in respect to the surf and bus driving terms and conditions, I was notified yesterday that surf funding is certainly on hold at present until the direction from government is made clear. That's come from our colleagues in Waka Kotahi, so that's on hold. While we can still work out how the picture will look in respect to our operators in that space, we have to wait and see at this time before we know where we're heading. In respect to the Tauranga bus network refresh, again, I think it's well known that that's simply on hold at present, but aiming to be able to implement a refresh in the new financial year. However, there are some tweaks to some lower level changes that will be taking place between then and now. And there's also an update in the report from Tauranga City Council. If anyone would like to add to that. And in respect to on demand, that's progressing very well and certainly gaining momentum. We have a signed contract with a bus operator, which is exciting. So another step forward. And I think I forgot to mention the national ticketing solution update. So two of our members last week went to National Hui in respect to NTS. Very impressed with the level of organisation and planning, and quite clear a lot of work ahead of us, but looking to be a very good product. So they came back quite energised and excited about what's on the horizon. Further, Dan?
Yeah, just a couple from me. So the national ticketing system, you're talking about it being mid-2025. If we, for instance, when we look at the potential of park and ride and having to put new buses on, is that an issue for us with regards to ticketing systems and having it, because originally we thought we were going to be first off the block in sometime 24, and I think it's got back approximately a year. Is that going to affect our operational capacity?
Through you, Chair. Yes, we are anticipating a delay on NTS. It is a national technology project, and it is having to work through a lot of things and integrate with a lot of different processes. The challenge we have as a council is we currently use the RITS ticketing system, so it's to what extent we want to invest in technology, which we know within the next 18 to 24 months will be surplus to requirements with limited to no second-hand markets.
So what are the implications for us of that?
If we add in new services and we need more ticketing machines than we currently have available, we will either have to invest in technology that won't have any resale value, or we should assume won't have any resale value, or run those buses without ticket machines. That will mean that we'll be unable to use the VCARS ticketing system and unable to collect the data that informs our planning processes.
So I went down with staff this morning to that bus company depot and handed out awards for customer service, basically. A very, very successful morning. And there's a couple of things interesting came out of that. One was that the Connect operators of our bus system also run Hamilton and Auckland, and they said the culture in Tauranga is miles better than either of those other two, which is pleasing, when considering the problems we had late last year where we had 500, they were 500 short on bus drivers overall. There appeared to be a very good culture in the room from the drivers, and that was really good to see. But what I did notice out the back is there's quite a lot of spare buses in the yard. Now that just might happen to be a Tuesday, or it could, but I didn't check whether they all have RITs in them, but I'm presuming they do. And so there still appears to be capacity. They've actually got a surplus of drivers rather than a shortage at the moment. So they're in good space staff-wise. And the senior management, just talking to them, seemed very confident in our systems. But that was just what I saw was, quite a lot of buses that, and I just want, I don't know if they do or don't, but I don't want to see us getting hooked up by not being able to run an effective service because we haven't got enough machines. And are they very expensive per bus if we put new machines in? What's the constraint?
Stuart, correct me. There's the machines and then all of the wiring that goes with them. I think it's over $20,000 per vehicle is my understanding, but I'm not an expert in ticketing. But we do have a systems team that are, so we can certainly give you a clearer steer on how much that is likely to cost us. Just around sort of vehicle availability, I mean, vehicles are cycled through sort of standard maintenance, and there will be school vehicles that wouldn't have been on the road at the time you visited. I mean, we are aware of the total number of assets that they have and how those are deployed. So we are using that fleet pretty much to its full potential during our busiest periods.
Thank you. Just one more from me, because this is the Tauranga on demand. We've got a go live date. Can't remember what it was in March 24. So we're within 3 months of going live. Can you give us a bit of I don't get a picture from the reading the stuff as to what you're actually doing. You know, what's it going to look like? Is this going to allow us to take some of our big buses off the routes that these smaller, more adaptive buses? Is there a capability there for us to use a couple of? I just don't get the picture out of this, and I just wonder if you could expand, just so that we have a clearer understanding of what's going to happen in March, how's it going to operate, what routes, you must be pretty well down the line now, but this just didn't give, I don't know how the commissioners feel. Do you get a picture? Am I missing something? I just didn't get a picture.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, I didn't get, and it's a big expense, and I would have expected to have a much better picture.
So through you, Chair, the on-demand is effectively if you think of Uber for buses, so we will have 5 electric minivans, 4 in service at any one time, and 1 what we call hot spare that can be called on at a moment's notice to support the service. So those will be trundling around in an area which broadly encompasses Pies Park, the lakes, Tauranga, all the way to Tauranga Hospital. So within that area, you will be able to request a ride either through an app or through our call centre. The computer algorithm will then pair you with other people, and this bus will trundle around within that area and take you to your desired destination. On demand is referred to as corner to corner rather than door to door. So effectively what we have is virtual bus stops that are dotted around that area. So you might not have to walk, let's say the average of 200 meters to a bus stop. The beauty of on demand is one, you can tailor your corner to corner much better than you can with a conventional fixed route service. But it also allows us to penetrate deeper into communities that are challenging to serve with fixed route public transport. Areas like Pies Park and the lakes being very residential and having winding streets are not particularly suitable for our conventional urban services. Ultimately, this is a trial. We want to trial this over an 18-month period to see how our community react to it, how it's used, how effective it can be. It's no secret that when trialled in other places in New Zealand, on demand has proved to be a very expensive way of delivering public transport. So we really want to understand what the value proposition is here in Tauranga. In terms of making changes to the fixed route network, that is something that we are looking at. What we don't want to do is make substantive changes to the fixed route network, given that this is a trial, because one assumes that after 18 months, the trial will stop and we will have to put back in place what was there before we commenced that period. But it is our intention to make some tweaks to the urban services, so we're not unnecessarily duplicating services and using ratepayers' money inefficiently. In terms of what this will actually look and feel like, we do have very advanced comms plans. We're conscious that this is something that is new for Tauranga and new for this region. So what we are planning to do is a very intensive public awareness campaign commencing 4 weeks out from launch. This is because we're concerned if we go too early, we might have a bit of a false start, a bit of confusion, especially when people are planning how they move around So we can certainly start to share more with you. We've got draft deliveries for the vehicles now. So these plans are fairly advanced. So happy to provide you with further updates as we move further and further towards March 24.
So this doesn't include OLED to that area at all. So if I look at patronage, and I'm just looking at patronage for adult fairs in the last 11 months up to November, where the Pies Park Region Run is our fourth or fifth highest patronage at around 28,000 for the month, just over 28,000. So for this, I just wonder. It's just a question I've been thinking. If you're not taking the big buses off, and if you took the big buses off, would the on-demand service be able to cope with it? Is the first thing. But you're saying you're not going to take them off. But I would have thought we would have at least limited gone to a different timetable maybe, or to get some more efficiency.
Yeah, that is the intention. We are looking at curtailing some routes so we don't have unnecessary complication. As you rightly noticed, we do have some very well utilised routes, so it's a careful balance. We don't want to unnecessarily duplicate, but also we don't want to deter our existing customers by pulling the rug out from under their feet. So it is quite a delicate balancing act. Ultimately, part of this trial is to look at how on-demand could complement our fixed route network. Whilst the Pies Park Grid and CBD route is very well utilised, what we consistently hear through surveys is that our coverage isn't particularly good up in Pies Park because we can't get into the smaller roads because our vehicles can't go down those winding roads. So we're hoping that we can enhance our coverage there and ultimately get more bums on seats.
Thank you. Commissioner Selwood, then Tony.
Yeah, thanks for that line of questioning. I found it really helpful to get a more in-depth understanding. Ollie, you mentioned that the origins, you described the origins, the destinations being how flexible. So you mentioned Tauranga Hospital, but if I were to do it on demand, where could I go to?
The possibilities within reason will be pretty much endless within that area. So the whole area will be covered with what we're deeming virtual bus stops. So that will include key places like the hospital, Fraser Cove, Tauranga Crossing. But ultimately, if it's deemed a safe place to stop and set people down from the on-demand minibus, you will be able to request to go to that place. So it provides significantly enhanced coverage in that part of the Te Papa Peninsula and beyond.
But not beyond the hospital, would that be the furthest extreme?
Correct. So it's a balancing act. The bigger you make your study area, either the more vehicles you need to cover it, or the longer the average wait for trips. So we looked at a number of different areas and found that this area that we've chosen to run the trial suited the objectives of the trial best.
But you could pick up an on-demand, drop the hospital, transfer to the record service.
Absolutely. So yeah, Greerton is somewhere, for example, where we would encourage people to transfer onto a conventional service if they wanted to get into the CBD or beyond.
Okay. And my second question goes back to the national plan solution. Do I understand correctly that?
Is your mic
Sorry. Do I understand correctly that that is a credit card, EFTPOS card ticket, like in Australia?
So the intention is that it supports a whole variety of media. So be that a card, so a standard payment bank card. I think there would also be the option to have a smart card if you wanted to, but it will have the ability to use that whole suite of payment options.
So I don't have to be a B card holder or an OT card holder, I can just be an ordinary person with EFTPOS in my pocket and I can,
That's correct.
Commissioner.
That was sort of where I was going, because I really wanted to ask why you had stated that you thought the national ticketing solution would encourage more people to use public transport rather than just people who are already using buses. But if you can use your credit card, that makes a big difference. A lot easier.
Yes, one thing that we're very conscious of is people's first interaction with public transport, and that being a positive experience. And something that we hear all too frequently is people try and use our buses, get on, try and tap their EFTPOS card, are told by the driver, sorry, you can't use that. And they never use public transport again. So it's all about trying to improve the quality of that interaction and people's first experience with the service to try and get people to adopt it.
And do I take it then that the data that you'll get from that system will give more access to data that we've sort of talked about trying to get than your current system will provide?
Absolutely, through you, Chair. The system that we currently use, the V-card system, which is supported by RITS, is very much a first generation smart card. It is, in technology terms, pretty antiquated now. It's been a great bit of kit, but it needs replacing with the newest stuff that's available. There are lots of conversations ongoing, which Stuart and his team are involved in, around what sort of data councils want to collect to inform planning processes, and that's all going into that design process. So it is a completely open book, sort of blank sheet in terms of the possibilities there.
So so 2.1.3, the bus refresh, can we get a bit more clarity? Because to me, this, I know we've got issues with our network.
Sorry, I just don't know what it is.
Well, I'll explain it to you first thing, what the refresh is. So the start of the refresh, the first bit we did was Pat Mara, that said, that was just changing route, evaluating routes, changing, tweaking the system to get more effective and efficient. But we've had problems. You can explain it if you could just put a bit more detail for.
Yeah, certainly. So phase 2 of the Tauranga bus network upgrades was originally indicated was going live in November of this year, and that clearly hasn't happened. So, as I think everyone will know, we designed a new network. We went out and consulted on that. We made changes in response to consultation and came up with sort of a final network. The challenge we faced was due to especially congestion on the network and the need to add in additional buses to make the timetable more resilient. We quite quickly exceeded the financial delegation that we had for that project, and we didn't have funding approved within this annual plan period to implement the network. For context, the cost overruns were potentially up to $3 million. What we have done, following direction from the Public Transport Committee, is staff have taken that project away. We are currently working on ways to break it up into smaller, more manageable chunks. There will be elements of that which may be cost neutral to implement, so we will look at how we can roll those out. However, the more costly elements of that proposal may well need to be de-scoped or wait until next financial year, subject to funding from the LTP.
Thank you. So just to put some context, right, when we did the Patamara part of the refresh, we actually saved $1 million because we changed the operating model. But that was in COVID when, things were constrained with, they didn't have the drivers anyway, so it suited the operator. We're in a different paradigm at the moment. So the negotiating power is quite different. So it's just to understand that aspect.
But it is helpful to have that, as Ollie's just said, because that relates to what we've been talking about.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, I will move that we receive, all we have to do is receive the report. I'll move that. Seconded by Commissioner Toddy. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Jess, just while you're not a voting person, you are entitled to have put your oar in at any stage. So we move on to the public transport services infrastructure business case. Floor yours, Matthew.
Thank you for that introduction, and hi everyone today. Matt Kilpatrick, Senior Transport Planner at Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and today I'm here to give an update on our PT Services and Infrastructure business case to you all.
Sometimes about 5-second delay.
Just got to turn it on, it was off. Yes, as I said, keen to give you all an update today on the awesome progress that we've made on this project. Help share with you how we can collectively deliver the change we need in public transport to achieve the Connected Centres vision, and that the TSP is looking for as well. And lastly, most importantly, I'm looking for your endorsement today on the emerging preferred option, which was identified from our shortlist workshop that was recently held on the 31st of October with project stakeholders. Project scopes, I'm just going to recap on what this project is about, even though I've shared this in prior updates. We're ultimately looking at everything services and infrastructure for our future fixed route urban network. We identified in prior work before this business case our future hybrid network through our public transport reference case, which identifies the preferred through-routed network, which I'll touch on again shortly. For the infrastructure, this business case is looking at the level of infrastructure that will be needed to support this future hybrid network. The business case has a 30-year outlook. However, we're looking at delivering a 10-year delivery infrastructure plan at the end of this business case. Customer focus is very much at the heart of this business case, with a particular focus on service reliability. We know from prior work that we've done through our bus user and non-user surveys that service reliability is the most important thing that customers and potential customers would look for in the service. So that's what we're trying to achieve through this business case. Not in scope, so we're looking at our future fixed urban network, and things out of it are fares, the parking strategy, and anything to do with behavioural change or travel demand management. Just the points on here just highlight the prior updates that we've gone and done to this committee and others. Here's our proposed future hybrid bus networks. You've all seen this picture before. I think the key characteristics to this that differ from the current network, so a substantially higher level of frequency of bus services made up across the network. The majority of the services on here actually are more through-routed. So that was a key thing from our user and non-user surveys, that people actually wanted to get on a bus and take it directly to their destination. And the benefit of that is actually it means that people don't have to get off the bus and transfer onto another bus, which can be a pain. It's less infrastructure intensive in the sense that we don't have buses terminating anymore in the CBD, which is absolutely awesome. Particular importance, I think, is our flagship corridor, which runs along Cameron Road from Tauranga through past the CBD and through to Arataki. It's the highest frequency of services through this corridor, which is absolutely awesome to support all the good work that we're doing along to Papa. And just lastly, it's scalable and flexible as well. So we could stage the rollout of this network over time, and we can extend it if we need to key sort of growth areas, for example, the likes of like Tauranga and the work going out in Tauranga. A bit of a project update. So the last time we caught up, I think it was in August sometime, and it's safe to say we've been pretty busy. We've gone out and engaged with iwi and hapu, both for Tauranga, so that's iwi and hapu representatives for Tauranga City, and also iwi and hapu out in the wider Western Bay. Most recently, the project team went out to the combined Tangata Whenua Forum, got some awesome feedback on the project. We went out and engaged with Western Bay councillors on the 4th of July. We also learned, I think, so this points from a technical perspective through the business case, we've recently learned that the hybrid network service model, that future network you just saw, relies on continuous bus priority on the Tauranga CBD to Arataki corridor. And we also need wider network infrastructure improvements to support this future network. Most recently, we held our shortlist workshop with project partners on the 31st of October, which went really well. And I'll touch a bit more on that shortly. We've also recently gone to the TSP Program Managers Group on the 10th of November 2023 to give a similar update to what we're giving today on the emerging preferred option. Just lastly, we've recently undertaken some good work through the Community Leaders Forum. So Councillor Thompson requested the last time we gave an update here that we would have some form of targeted engagement, and we've gone and done just that. So we had basically some email correspondence and 2 set meetings with a bunch of wider stakeholders across the 10th of November and the 16th of November. So we've got some awesome feedback from them on the project, and we'll incorporate that into the business case. So what we're here to talk about today. So we have an overview here basically of 3 key options that were talked about at our shortlist workshop in October. So I'm just going to run through the 3 options really quickly. So the first option here, option 1, is comprehensive bus priorities. What the network, so what the picture sets out here is the highest level of the 3 options for public transport infrastructure made up of mid-block and intersection type treatments. The second option here, option 2, on the left of the screen, is a medium level of infrastructure investment, just focusing on the key sort of priority corridors where public transport is. And option 3 is a lower level of investment, the lower level of infrastructure across just those sort of key areas. At the workshop, we ran through scoring and got feedback from each of the attendees, the stakeholders at the workshop. So just to reiterate, we have 3 key investment objectives as this project. We're wanting to improve competitiveness and reliability of PT, improve customer experience and perception, and improve access through increasing access of the population to public transport, but also the coverage of that public transport to the key destinations that people want to go to. On a whole, option 1 scored the best against each of those objectives and was the best scoring option of the 3. The do minimum here is basically the network over time, and basically the network just did not score well at all, so we can't stand still with where we currently are. The second layer to the scoring of the 3 options in that workshop was the critical success factors. So again, you have a look through here. Option 1 scored the highest again against these. So that was the outcome of that. So the overall findings from the workshop. So option 1, that's our hybrid model and comprehensive priority across the network, performs the best against our investment objectives and the critical success factors, and is the best option that we have through the business case to deliver the connected centres model. Option 1 is over the long term, so it's over a 30-year period, so it doesn't need to be done immediately as such. And we're working very much with the existing business cases that are currently running through. So that's like Cameron Road, 15th Avenue, and so on. And things actually really well aligned between option one and those business cases. So that's really awesome. The business case itself, when complete, will identify infrastructure gaps in current planning to inform a 10-year delivery program made up of largely quick wins for infrastructure, which the councils can deliver over the next 10 years. This little table down the bottom here is just a quick comparison that we pulled from one particular route in our hybrid network. So you see here we've got a do minimums, that's the current service offering, option one, option two, and option three. Option one, as you can see, almost halved the travel time against the current offering. The PC trips nearly doubled, and the total daily public transport trips improved substantially as well. So some real benefits there for our customer from that option one. And also to note, it doesn't reflect the other important thing, which is that journey time reliability that I touched on earlier. Findings for Park and Ride. So as part of this work, we engaged consultant to undertake an independent assessment of Park and Ride to understand whether it could complement this business case, which is solely looking at the future fixed route urban bus network. We wanted it to understand the value and any gaps against our future hybrid fixed route network. So we looked at 4 Park and Ride locations, and it sort of followed on from the work of the Urban Form and Transport Initiative. So the sites were Omokarela, Domain Road, Te Puna, and Tauranga. I think on a whole, each of the sites had their own respective challenges. The trips from those particular Park and Ride sites from the work that was done were often longer at times than that of our future hybrid network, fixed route hybrid network. Often some of those sites, through the sort of catchment analysis we did, would actually cannibalize some of our actually customer base that we would actually hope to use our future fixed route network. So that's not good. And generally speaking, there was quite high costs and constructability challenges across each of the 4 sites that would outweigh benefits. So I think it's safe to say there might be strategic reasons to progress a Park and Ride, but our emerging recommended options through the shortlist workshop, that's option one, does not preclude Park and Ride in the future, but it does not require Park and Ride to deliver against the project objectives. So just concluding, the next steps for our business case is to confirm that draft 10-year implementation program based on option one, and it's looking at quick wins to achieve that and working with existing business cases. And a key next step in the business case as we look to complete it later this year is to develop the management case, and that case in the business case is all about understanding how, when, and who's going to be delivering what and when for the business case. We're looking to finalise a completed business case by February 2024, and then we will look to seek adoption by the partner organisations, and we'll come back to you all with an update once that's completed. So that concludes my presentation today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Yeah, so I'll start off. I'm quite surprised with this paper that it doesn't lead into the cost side of it. And I know you say that it's draft and that will come, but you know, how do you ascertain which is the best model when there's no comparatives of the cost? Because you know, I get no sense of what the costs are in both infrastructure and in operating effectiveness and efficiency. So both cases, you know, I can't gauge from this report, and not to say you haven't done it, but can you give me a better understanding of that, is my first question. And the second one is about the target engagement. And I noticed that you've talked to Western Bay councillors. Is that the Western Bay District Council councillors?
Yes, that's correct.
And you haven't talked to Tauranga City councillors who also would be requiring, I would have thought, if it's infrastructure, there's funding, so, and I just think the engagement, I think to get anything across the line, we actually have to take people with us, and especially key stakeholders, and I would have thought, the three councillors would be a very first stepping off place. Maybe that comes later, but you can just, if you could, that's my second query, as to, where it is, and, I would then, as my final thing, ask, for a Wakaka Day, view on how this is looking from their perspective, recognising that it's such an uncertain playing field at the moment, and so we understand that, yes, so that, but anyway, Matthew.
Through you, Chair, I'll pick up the engagement points and then I'll let Matthew hit the other points that you raised. So we're very conscious, and I think Matthew had a slide that illustrated it, that we've brought this project in front of this committee on a number of occasions. However, a portion of this project does have implications for the Western Bay, who are not members of this committee. So we felt it important to provide a briefing to Western Bay councillors on what the project was, what it was hoping to deliver, and Matthew and the project representative from Tauranga City Council went along and provided that briefing. So that is the reason why that briefing was undertaken. In terms of wider engagement, we're very conscious that this project has it touches the whole of Tauranga and the Western Bay, and it is incredibly challenging to consult on that level for something that's broadly strategic, and people won't really start to see the benefits of it for a fair number of years. So on the direction of a member of this committee, we set up targeted engagements, which we felt was appropriate for a project sort of this strategic nature. But we do accept that there is a huge piece to do in terms of public acceptance and bringing the wider community along for the ride. To achieve that, we feel it's important to dovetail this with the other comms work that's being developed as part of the wider TSP. You'll be aware that there is a work stream looking at that to tell the overall sub-regional transport story. So we feel that that's where that engagement best sits at a programme level, so we can tell that story and all aspects of that story and how public transport plays its part as we move into the future, and how people will move around our sub-region over the next 10 plus years. But I'll pass to my colleague to answer your other points.
Thanks for that, Ollie, and thanks for that, Mr. Chair, on your question as well. Yeah, no, we totally consider cost. It's important to understand in one of the slides that I actually shared earlier, cost is actually considered against the shortlist options through an assessment. So you'll find, if you have a look. Got a bit excited there. So you have a look at towards the top of the table, you'll see cost, so CapEx and OpEx and value for money are all key criteria that are considered against each of the options, and those were scored by subject matter experts and then agreed on by the stakeholders at the shortlist workshop. Important to note as well that the emerging preferred option is still very high level, and costs associated with that will actually be understood more as we work through the business case, particularly the financial case, as we work through beyond the current part of this business case now.
Yeah, well, so the level of, I saw the scoring, but there's no understanding of the level of cost, what's it really going to look like? And on page 20, you have the map of what it looks like. If you go back, one more. That one.
Yeah.
So what I would be really interested in is understanding like having what the current system looks like, sitting beside that, so that we can actually get a better understanding of what radical changes are we considering? Is it radical or is it just a tweak? Just so that we can understand, and then you put that against the cost of get value, effectiveness. Anyway, that's just some thoughts for the future. Did you want to comment on it, Jess? Before we ask more questions.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots more. Yeah, look, we've been involved heavily in this and supporting this. I think one of the key pieces of feedback which comes in the next stage that we've given is staging is really important. It is a big investment, it is a big number, there's a lot in it. There's a lot of projects happening on the key corridors at the moment, so which are kind of giving effect to this. Can't do it at once. And I think the thing to keep in mind is this is kind of a 30 to 50 year. It's not this week, it's not this year. And that is work that they tell me that they're working through at the moment. And I think that's been a big part of kind of how I've worked through it with the team.
So the aspect of the business case that our technical advisors are busy working up is the management case. So that effectively looks at, well, how do you realistically deliver something like this? As Jess said, it is a huge undertaking. A lot of the priority measures that we'll need in the short and medium term to support this network are already being delivered by business cases that are either in flight or are upcoming. So in the short term, all we're really looking at is what are the most critical gaps in those infrastructure enhancements. And in a lot of cases, that's likely to be low-hanging fruit that can just be sort of managed over the next few years. But as we move into a time horizon much further into the future, so we're talking sort of 15, 20, 30 years time, we will need to go further. So that's what this business case is going to signal, that a lot of the good work that's going on at the moment will go a long way towards supporting this network. But 2048 onwards, we are likely to need to do more, but that's likely to be when a lot of those big corridor upgrades would be reaching that point where they would be going under some sort of a refresh anyway. So we don't see this. This isn't a plan to dig up half the city and relitigate projects that are already underway by any means.
Well, that brings me, I've got a number of questions. So first of all, can you just explain, so in your program and your development of it, when you talk about wider network infrastructure improvements, what are you talking about?
It's referred to in those sort of three images that I showed you as sort of wider network treatments, be it corridor and intersection type improvements, infrastructure related, outside of the sort of key priority corridors, like sort of Cameron Road with the Finch Avenue and that sort of thing.
So it's not roading infrastructure, it's lights and...
Well, that too as well. Yeah, it's the whole suite of things.
So it takes into account all the roading infrastructure that would need it. So just looking at some of those, you're going into places like Matua and Automoto where there's two-way streets, and you're talking about having bus lanes. So does it take into account that you'd have to build another lane of roading?
So it will look through a suite of measures. So I don't think anyone is suggesting that we put bus lanes down to Matua, but it might be at the junction onto Matua at some point in time, it would be appropriate to consider some sort of signal priority in that location. So depending on the area.
So the answer to my question is there's no roading infrastructure in here, in these costings. Is that, because that's the question I'm asking, is it bus related infrastructure or is it extra roading infrastructure?
There will be elements of roading infrastructure, but that treatment isn't assumed to be needed throughout the whole network. But there might be targeted bits of roading infrastructure that need to be done to enable this.
So you still haven't answered my question. In your costings, have you included those extra bits of roading infrastructure that might be needed?
My understanding is yes.
Yes, that's correct, but it's important to note that it's really high level, that the cost that I put in the paper is just a high level of indicative cost.
I'm not even talking dollars. I'm just wanting to make sure that when we're costing this, it's not just costs for buses, and it's the wider infrastructure. Because my next question is, does that, if there's anything that TCC has to invest, is that form part of our 10-year plan?
My understanding is that it's the full shebang of suite of improvements. The costs that we are talking about here today, we haven't really touched on, but we've sort of associated with 3 options, is the full shebang of costs associated with it.
Okay, and then is there any link to the TCC long-term plan that's currently out for consultation at the moment? Because that's important that the two are connected.
Yeah, so we've been working closely with TCC staff on that, and it's totally integrated. Yeah.
I'm looking at Nick, so the costs, any potential costs are already in our transport plan?
Yeah, we have included some costs. It's early days and it is hard to tell exactly what it is, but there are assessments in the long-term plan to cover for this. Yeah.
So my second question is, if your focus is on service delivery, and you're working alongside the different business cases, you'll be aware that there's probably 4 major projects affecting this. And the Gantt chart of all of that shows huge disruption. And you are proposing to deliver this, even though it's a 30-year plan, over the next 10 years. Have you taken into account how you're going to get service reliability with those major projects happening on those similar roads?
So through you, Chair, it is a significant challenge, and it's something that the management case will look at. We can't deliver this in isolation. This needs to work in the wider ecosystem. There are things that we can potentially do, look at how we could potentially deliver a degree of bus priority during those roadworks to try and keep Tauranga moving the best we can, and we're certainly interested to work with TCC to understand how we can play our part in keeping Tauranga moving during those times. Just further to Nick's comments, sort of in that short to medium term, we're anticipating that a lot of the priority measures needed to support this network will be delivered by existing TCC and Waka Kotahi projects. It's looking further afield, perhaps that next 10-year period, or even further into the future, where we'd need to come back and have a more detailed discussion around, we've delivered those big projects, what maybe do we need next?
Okay, so have you seen the Gantt chart? Yeah, okay. Okay, then my next question then is, have you done, as a result of, as part of this, any modelling? Because you might get better services through your public transport, but the rest of the city might come to a halt. So have you done the modelling on the effect of that on the rest of the transport around the city, and particularly through the residential areas?
Through the business case, we've gone and done modelling of each of the options that you've seen there in the short, so those 3 key options, to understand the impact and benefit that would have on our customers along the network.
No, not your customers. I'm talking about our customers, which is all the other people that are using that road.
I would say probably hasn't looked at it from that angle, but through the respective business cases, which we're regularly communicating with for this, they're well versed in it, and they do particular modelling to understand through those particular projects the impact that it has on the road users itself. But that's not my projects to sort of make that comment, but I would just say yeah.
Just further to Matthew's answer there, a key part of the business case is the economics, which does look at the impacts of highway delay. So regardless, that will be flushed out as we move through this process. But as a lot of these upgrades, certainly in the short to medium term, are being delivered through other projects, those projects have done incredibly detailed modelling around the level of PT infrastructure and the trade-offs and impacts that has on private cars.
I'm not so much worried about those big projects. It's the other bits in between and the modelling of what's going to happen, because what we've seen with B2B is that actually the residential streets become the rat runs. So the minute what happens there?
No, so that's a good point, and further to Ollie's one that he's just made, those sorts of considerations should be further explored more when we get through later in the business case, but to say that we've looked through this stage at this current point in the business case would be inappropriate, because we just haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. And once it's sort of set and you guys are aware of that merging preferred option, then we can look through it in further detail. But it would be sort of unwise to sort of look through it to that level at this point in the business case.
I don't know about when the appropriate time is, but I would be reluctant to settle on an option if I had no idea as to what was going to happen to the rest of the network for all the rest of the people that are using the roads. So whenever it's appropriate, it surely has to form part of the selection of the option, because we can't just look at it from a public transport point of view. We have to be looking at it in the wider transport network.
I'll just note that point, Commissioner. Thank you.
And then the last question would be, last comment would be, I don't think that we could really just rely on TSP managing communication, because some of these changes are going to have huge effect, and there is no face to TSP. It'll end up being TCC council and a regional council, and it'll all come to a shuddering halt the minute that the public are up in arms, because they'll just go straight to your councils. Won't they, Andrew?
They certainly will. Yeah, I'm with you. And you saw the rough drawing on the board down below of the different government structures. And we, at our regional council, recognise that as a constraint at the moment, which we need to address. So, say no more. But, Commissioner Selwyn.
Thanks, Chair. I also have a range of questions, and I should say up front, I actually like the concept of the hybrid system, and I think the through routes are a significant enhancement of the hub and spoke approach that we have at the moment. That said, I've got some real reservations around endorsing the business case on the basis of what I see here, because I just don't think we have enough supporting information to do that. And my concern is centred around really two prime issues. One is cost, and Chair, you've already asked some of those questions, but also benefit. So, you know, I accept that we improve reliability and levels of service, and that surely must be the outcome that we're looking for. But also, our fundamental objective with public transport is to deliver, and our goal is to deliver a 20% mode shift, right? And I don't see any information here about actually what this will deliver in mode shift. And I don't see any comparative information as to whether or not option one, albeit good on a whole bunch of criteria that have been used in the MCA, how that actually compares against option two relative to mode share. Because I see option two, you know, it's actually not that far behind in terms of total PT trips, but I don't know the relative cost difference between the two. So it's hard for me to say, well, there's a clear case for option one, given the lack of information of relative cost benefit. And I'm also curious about the business case process. So if we endorse option one now, does that mean option two and three are now precluded and all focus is on doing a business case around option one? But that's what's implied in the report, so I think that's critical. You know, I mean, I note that option one really struggles on CapEx. I'd like to know how much of the total cost we've actually got in our LTP.
Yeah.
Value for money is not great. Affordability is not great. So all of those criteria, then practical feasibility. and I look at that and, you know, the commissioner's point around how does this work in a network that frankly we're going to be turning upside down for the next probably decade. And how responsive will the model be to all of that and how can that be? So that whole management case, I think, is fairly fundamental. So the trouble with these MCA kind of processes is you end up with so many criteria that they all tend to sort of cancel one another out. One of the key critical success factors that hasn't been scored, at least I can't see the rating anywhere, is the whole social license conversation. And we know that when we've done Cameron Road, the social license around that has been extremely problematic. In fact, we don't have a social license right now. We've burned it off. And so the suggestions that, you know, we're going to be taking away lane capacity and all of that sort of thing, I think is just going to be red rag to a bullseye. I really want to understand that in much more significance. So for me, Chair, I guess I'm saying I've got a whole bunch of questions that the report doesn't currently answer, and I'm really struggling to make a decision in support of the recommendation based on what I have in front of me.
Through you, Chair, I'll let Matthew pick up on some of your more detailed points, Commissioner. The intention of staff is to take the point we're up to and continue towards completing that process. That will, as part of that, generate the technical work and thinking to answer the majority of your questions. No doubt there's some that Matthew can provide further context on today. What we're really seeking is that high level endorsement of general direction of travel. We are not asking to lock an option in today. So as we move forward, undertake the economics, go through that management case, it may well be that things are uncovered which require us to come back to you with new information. So this is really just endorsing the general direction of travel today. And if we do need to update the recommendation to reflect that's not a problem at all. I guess just to provide the business case team with some confidence, what we don't want to do is do that final step where we effectively take that technical thinking from sort of 60% up to 100%. If there isn't a high level sort of level of support for the general direction of travel. So it really is just that check-in at this moment in time that we're and sort of a high level endorsement that the project team are seeking. But Matthew, I'll let you respond to any of those more detailed points.
There's a couple of, thanks Ollie, I think there's a couple of points that you raised and a very valid point. I think all of it, I know it's not the answer you probably want to hear, but it's quite literally just the stage in the business case that we are now that we can't literally show more in terms of like the specific details on costings because we're quite literally not there. As Ollie's alluded to, we're not seeking, you know, that option one is going to be the set and final option and it's going to be super expensive and that sort of thing. It's just for this point in the business case, the high level direction that we take going forward is through option one. The detail around the costings will come through and how it's delivered will come through in the short to medium term through that 10-year delivery program, which from what we know, talking to the technical team, is going to be made up of low cost quick wins that will actually complement the existing key corridor business cases. The key corridor business cases are bearing all the existing budgeted costs for that. That they bear the sort of majority of the costs for the sort of things that we sort of want in this project, if that sort of makes sense. So that's from a costing side. So next time we come to you guys, we will have that information to share. We just quite literally don't have it. It's just the process we have to follow through Whakatahi. The social license side is a great point that you've raised, and I totally get it. Actually, we're actually achieving a lot of, I think, wins on that social license side, or challenges, Commissioner Tolley, as you sort of might think, on those existing corridor business cases that we actually have at the moment. And they're achieving, actually, particularly in the short and medium term, exactly what we're sort of trying to align towards in this particular business case. But I think the social license thing in general is just a challenge that we have across all these sort of multimodal projects, and it's not specific to PT as such. So the transport system plan, which sits as the umbrella for all the transport projects at the moment, there are plans in place to do a sort of a socialisation of that. And I think from the conversations that I've been involved in, it might be sometime early next year. But that messaging and how it's laid out will really be some messaging to sort of explain to the public around what we're sort of aspiring to work towards in terms of like walking and cycling public transport and how these sort of projects fit in. But I'm expecting that piece of work to do a lot of heavy lifting. In terms of like wider socialization and like community engagement, there'll be an expectation from this sort of project and well in the future when we actually sort of know what the final product is, that we might be going out to the community and actually doing engagement with them. But this is, particularly on this point in the business case, very high level. It's very high level in terms of the future network, and it's very high level in terms of the sort of infrastructure options that we're just showing through today.
Thanks, Nathan. And thanks, Ollie. And I think on the assurance that we are not cutting out options and that we are understanding that this is a kind of a general direction of travel, that gives me some comfort. The key question that hasn't been answered that I'd like to get a handle on though is what does this mean for mode shift? Given that we're investing, I would imagine, several $1 billion all up in all of these cases, what's the mode shift? And how does that compare to our 20% target?
So I'm not in the detail of the modelling, so I'm not sure if there's anyone in the room more qualified to answer this question than I am. My understanding is that this catapults us up to around 10%. But as Matthew presented on one of his first slides, this project doesn't look at the wider behavioural change initiatives, which we see as being hugely powerful in driving mode shift, as well as wider policy decisions that both of our councils and Walker are here responsible for. So fare strategy, parking strategy, all of those levers that carrots and sticks that can be used to try and make the transport system as efficient as it can be, get people on the right mode for their journey. So we see this project as doing a substantial amount of that heavy lifting, but completely acknowledge that there will need to be wider initiatives wrapped around this project to ultimately deliver or get us close to that magic 20%.
Yeah, so you see where I'm coming from. If I look at option 3, it's the least expensive option. It doesn't tick a lot of boxes in the greens, but does a reasonable job. It achieves total daily PT trips of 31,600 as compared with 33,700. That's within the margin of error, I would have thought. So the relative benefit of option 1 over option 3, or even 2 in the middle, it's not a compelling case there on the surface. And so that's the challenge that I think we have in front of us.
Yeah, I think the project team acknowledge that, and the current ranking is by applying the weighted factors that were sort of decided through the ILM process, the workshop process. So if you rank against those priorities with those weightings, that's the order you get out. As the project team move through the next stages of the process, they will be going down into benefits versus cost, which will help you understand exactly what we get. We need to understand the reliability implications. Commissioner Tolley raised the good points on wider network impacts, fare box recovery. There's a whole wealth of things that need to be understood in more detail to inform that final decision when the business case comes to you early next year.
Can I ask Jess, having heard the discussion, because I, like the commissioners, I've got real reservations about the second recommendation of even of endorsing this project at this stage. There's just not enough information. What if we receive the report but don't actually give, at best give a very, very high level endorsement, but preferably, to be honest, I don't think we're in a position to endorse today. What effect will that have on the TA process?
Look, I think your questions are really useful ones, and I think the conversation that prompted, I think the information you want is the same information I'm asking for. So I think you've given them in the team the direction around what more you need to see to go further. You've kind of given them these are the things we're comfortable, these are the things we want to know more. I think that's enough. The team have got that to work and then come back and probably in the new year at this point and with because this is not a formal endorsement, is there anything here where you're going, absolutely not? What we've heard is that's not the reaction, but there's some important questions you need answered before you endorse it. I think that's that's great direction to take it forward from here. And there are absolutely some huge trade-offs that are public transport centric business cases at risk of missing, and that's they're very aware that needs to be communicated and clear where those trade-offs are, so that doesn't get lost in a single mode business case.
Madam Chair. Madam
Chair. So I still don't understand what it is about this. I guess, and it's from someone who I don't understand, and I'd quite like to know what all these mean, curbside lane reallocation and intersections and mid-blocks. I don't understand that. But underneath it all, what is it about this that makes you think you will get mode shift? It's a simple question.
Yeah.
And why do you think you'll get to 10% and not 5% or 20%? Or what is it about this?
So it's based on both surveys that we've undertaken of our passengers here, non-users here, but also international research. So the two things that float to the top when it comes to people deciding whether they use public transport is it convenient and is it reliable? So to hit convenience, if you survey people in Tauranga, one of the big turn-offs is the need to have to change buses to travel between some of our key locations. So the through routing network addresses that. When it comes to reliability, the challenge we have is at the moment the bus sits in the same traffic as everyone else. So there isn't that differential taking the bus over the car. You can sit in the car, you can choose the temperature, you can choose the song on the radio. Why wouldn't you do it? So from that perspective, it's making sure that there is appropriate infrastructure in place so that the bus can move reliably and efficiently around the system. So that's what moves us towards both the hybrid through routed model, but also an appropriate level of infrastructure to keep that model reliable and efficient.
Just add to Ollie's point, it completely improves the network service offering for our customers and potentially non-customers to get them on the bus, even if it's a couple of times a week beginning with. And the cool thing about it is when we sort of scale up this network over time, it's seeing an incremental increase in mode shift with that as well. And we hope to come in line as well. There's other sort of wider things outside the business case, such as like your sort of parking strategy and travel demand management, which aren't part of this business case, but will positively complement it.
Just further to that, from a strategic perspective, we've been given sort of direction from UFT in terms of the connected centres model. So this is the network that best delivers that connected centres approach, connecting together as many of those key localities within a one-seat ride. And then just to answer your question, Commissioner, around how do we forecast the mode shift across to PT? So there is the Tauranga transport model, which TCC are the custodians of. So we work sort of hand in glove with that team who provide that sort of analytical support to all of the business cases currently going on within the sub-region.
Just on the numbers, to get back on that. So a lot of the infrastructure spend for public transport is in current business cases. And we do just want to highlight the fact that it's really important that this model feeds into that as we're about to approve, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, two of our major investments. So that's Area B and Cameron Road Stage 2, so that we know what this potentially could mean for the detailed design of those projects. So that's one part of the investment. The other one is that we have in the long-term plan, we went into the long-term plan, and that's obviously being massaged as we get through the consultation stage. We had $20 million over 10 years, so $2 million per year for the arterial review, plus 500,000 in planning. So that's just over 2 million a year. So that's not just for PT specific arterial review improvements, but some of it will be. We do think where there are improvements to be made for the overall sort of network, it is about creating priority for public transport as well. So the chunk of that, we don't know how much, but over time, some of that 2 million per year will go towards that.
Doesn't sound like.
It's not a lot. No.
So
But
can
like
I,
I said, I guess the major gains are in the projects that we're about to build. So, and a lot of the transport projects that we have planned, which there are a lot for Tauranga, not just the major ones that I mentioned, but a lot of the investment is already planned in those CapEx projects.
so that's in between.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we don't know what we don't know, so we have a sort of a generic allocation for stuff that crops up.
So can I just get, just so that I understand your map, so right of way intersections is where the lights allow the bus to go through first, is that what we're talking about?
That's correct, and leading up to as well.
Yeah. Right of way mid blocks, what does that mean?
It'd be right away, so buses would have like a particular treatment, like for buses itself, through the mid block between the intersections.
So it means a bus lane, does it?
Great.
And then a traffic lane reallocation at intersections, what does that mean?
There might be some form of bus priority again through intersections for buses specifically.
But in a special lane?
Leading up to and through the intersection, yes.
And a traffic lane reallocation mid blocks is what?
I think you just asked me that before.
No, it's a different colour.
So,
One's a right away.
yeah, for clarity, so you've got one that would be delivered within the existing road estates, and one would be effectively new infrastructure. So it's a more invasive treatment.
So the orange is new infrastructure, is it?
I think option one.
I'm looking at Appendix A, shortlist options, option one. I've got a purple one that says right of way mid blocks. And I've got an orange one that says traffic lane reallocation mid blocks.
Yeah, so I can give clarity to that. Sorry, I'm looking at the pictures. So for the key corridor, the wording in here says, so it would be like, in the long term, it might be potentially completely separate to the traffic lane altogether. So as Ollie said, a new piece of infrastructure. Option two looks at bus lanes in existing sort of vehicle traffic lanes. So making use of the existing lane. And then option three would be like just some form, it could be like a T2 or T3 level of option as well. It's important to understand though, just so you don't get the wrong message, that we're looking here at the options for like level of service. So it doesn't specifically have to be a certain type of infrastructure as such. So just don't get caught up on that. We're looking at like a level of service that we need in terms of like journey time reliability through a particular piece of infrastructure to support the high frequency future hybrid network. So just because it might say like those particular wording on there doesn't mean it's going to be specific to that. We're just looking at a high level, what sort of like treatments might deliver the level of service that we need.
Okay. And a curbside lane reallocation intersections.
So that's generally removing space that might currently be used for something like parking. So part-time or full-time clearway.
And then curbside lane reallocation mid blocks is removing parking again. So if you are trying to get politicians to endorse this, you need to actually explain it. So, I mean, I perfectly understand you're still at a high level and therefore you're at a transport expert level, but politicians will want to know what it actually means before they sign it off.
I totally understand. Good point.
So, commissioners, if we in recommendation 2, instead of saying endorses, if we put the word recognises the emerging preferred option. So that's,
I don't think we're even there, are we?
well, we can recognise, or do we just go for option,
Just go for option.
just receive the report at this stage?
For me, I mean, I think Stephen's raised some really interesting questions
Oh,
about
yeah.
between the three options. I'm with him, I don't understand why we go for the most expensive option that's giving us the same mode shift. The whole point in this is to get mode shift. So I'm not convinced that option 1, it should be the emerging, if you just focus on mode shift per cost, by cost. I'm happy to receive it, but I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. A lot more.
That's where I'm at too.
Well, we're pretty unanimous. Actually, because I'm the same, that's why I was trying to water down the wording, but we don't want to hamper the progress. We recognise the need for this to progress, and because it's really important to all our different AFD, smart growth, TSP, you start naming it, we've got it. This is critical. So the work's good, but it's not at a level that is explainable at a political level, so therefore it's probably not explainable at a community level either. And if we can't take our community with us, we won't make progress. So I'm happy to move that we, number 1, that we receive the report. Does that leave you with a problem?
I think I have to go back to the project team and have a chat with them around the sort of next steps for this. As I mentioned through in the presentation, we've gone through the TSP program managers group and gotten some awesome feedback from them on this. That endorsement would have been nice to just give us some confidence working through in that business case. So when we do come back to you, we have that information through on that 10-year delivery plan and some of those more detailed things around costings and timings and that sort of thing that might answer your questions. So it's definitely challenging, I think, given the situation we are. But that being said, I acknowledge some of the good points that you raised.
Yeah, I don't think that receiving the report stops any of that good work. It's not proceeding. But what it does is raise some clear issues that need to be resolved in that work if you're going to win the support of the committee.
So as I say, I'm sorry, Ollie, but I'm happy to move that we receive the report, but I like the commissioners, can't support the second part of the thing as it stands. So you'll second, I've moved it, seconded, and we'll just go with it. You know, we're not trying to slow you down or hold you up. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. That was, that blew out our time frames. But it was a really important discussion. So we'd allowed 20 minutes and we did 60. So, but it was too big an issue, just to let slide because of time. So we move on to 9.3, the Joint Committee Projects update on page 30. And that is Matthew again, is it?
That is me again. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully this one's a bit quicker. Fingers crossed. As usual, happy to take this report as read and answer any questions that you might have on the projects. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I feel through the Chair's report and previous discussion we've just had that we've touched on a lot of these projects. So as Matthew said, happy to answer any questions, and there are TCC projects in here as well, but probably have already spoken about a number of these already.
Just a heads up, I think that Cameron Road Stage 2 business case comes to the council meeting next Monday. I've got a stack of papers like that. Lots of pictures. And the Tauranga, I'm just looking for it here, the Tauranga West. Somewhere in here is also coming to that meeting. We're having this thing.
Point C, Commissioner.
On that. And accessible streets is area B, is that water?
That's right.
Right, so that's also coming to the December 11th meeting. I think we'll be parked here all day, starting at 8:30 and ordering pizzas for tea. There's 28 items on the agenda and there's some big ones. And again, just a heads up, what we're doing with that Automoto Accessible Streets program is we've been working closely with Wellington City Council on some of the treatments of cycleways in particular, and where they're with Waka Kotahi's approval and guidance had, rather than gone to a full-blown change that's quite expensive every time you go into the curb, of course, it costs a lot. So Wellington City's been working through some transitional changes that lead to your transformational changes, but it does allow you some flexibility to try some stuff without expending a lot of money. And so our staff have done some good work in that project. And some of the areas that were most contentious, I think, with the public when we were discussing with them, we're going to be trying some different things, which takes a lot of cost out of it, but gives you the opportunity to put something into place, have a look, see how it works, assess it, and then either change it or then move towards making it more permanent. So and I haven't read the agenda item yet, but that's where we're heading. So I just thought I'd give you a heads up on that. I've got that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Thanks.
So this is just, I've received the report.
I did have one question if I may.
Yeah.
I'm just keen to understand the timeline around the Cameron Road high-speed shelters. I guess in my heart of hearts, when we had that presentation from Mark Lassol, which seems like an eternity ago, that by the time we opened Cameron Road with its new upgraded capacity, that we might also have some great looking bus stops and that we could launch the whole service along Cameron Road as something a little bit special. Even if it didn't change, we'd tell a story about how good it was. But I just don't get a sense, and you'll be aware that obviously we had a discussion recently to delay the rollout of the dedicated lanes. And a key question in my mind is, when we do launch the new Cameron Road, what can we do to actually make it a little bit funky so that we attract some public sentiment and support and enthusiasm for the new service? So I think we need to have a really joined up solution. It'd be great if we could have at least one or two funkier bus stops. To be honest, they go anywhere near kind of what was in my imagination at the time we first started this process, but at least it might look a little bit better. So whatever we can do to enhance the delivery of that, I think should be on our agenda for some urgency. Do we know the timeline?
I couldn't tell you, so we did go through that, the earlier design process, but we got a number of options that were prohibitively expensive, and I'll have to check back into where the detail is on there.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not sort of talking about relitigating that process. I guess I'm expressing a little bit of disappointment that what we've ended up with is pretty ho-hum, but it's better than nothing, and so it would be good to run with what we've got sooner rather than later.
It's a functional approach at present.
Yes,
Very fun.
but no lighting, I noticed.
I like it. That's some coloured glass.
Yeah, through you, Chair, completely support a joined up approach around comms from a regional council staff perspective. A number of our key routes use that section of Cameron Road, so I'm sure there's something we can do to generate a bit of excitement, a bit of a buzz around it. So staff will set that up and talk about options.
Any further? Happy to move. Moved by Commissioner Colley, seconded by me. All in favour, please say aye. Against carried. We now move into